So you come to back to America, right? And now you grew up in the Bronx, which is not a easy city to live and grow up in. 9 years old, you started to kind of see the Bronx for really what it is, right? Did you go down a different path?
That began the start of my downward trajectory. I would activate 3 phones. I would sell a phone for between $300 to $900, and I would sell them to drug dealers. And that's where I was making way more money than selling drugs. I was making crazy money. December 2002, the walls came crashing down. I sold this drug dealer like 20, 30 phones, and those 20 to 30 phones cut off in like a week. And it was supposed to stay on for 90 days. And so I was scared to death for 2 reasons. My job might be on me, and I'm gonna go to federal prison. And then 2, this dude's gonna kill me.
How old were you when that happened? 19? Inevitably, if you do it long enough, you're gonna get caught. Let me introduce Remi Adeleke.
Yes, sir.
And how are you doing today, buddy?
Oh man, I'm on fumes, but fumes, as long as they're running, they're running. So I'm good to go, brother. I got my protein shake, got some hydration from my hydration station. I'm in it, brother.
Well, if you have fumes, you got a fire.
That's it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have enough to build the fire, man, to keep it stoked.
That's it, man.
So, do you drink coffee?
No, I don't. I don't drink coffee.
You're not a coffee drinker? Oh my God. Yeah. Here I thought I was talking to a man who doesn't quit. You know?
And I think the last time I drank coffee, I was probably like around 11 years old. My grandmother was an avid coffee drinker. And I remember looking at her coffee mug and it looked like caramel chocolate. And I was like, Grandma, can I try it? And she was like, this isn't for kids. And she let me try it. And I was like, oh.
Oh, so yeah, I bet you it was bitter.
Bunch of sugar in it too.
Oh man, that's great. That's great, man. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in Bronx, New York City, in the Big Apple, as they say.
Oh, no kidding. But you weren't born in the Bronx, though.
No, I was actually born in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, to be specific. And I was born into a super wealthy family. My dad was a well-known Nigerian engineer, philanthropist, businessman, you name it, he did it. He was the jack of all trades, master of everything. He was into the arts. And so because of his success in business, he ended up generating a lot of wealth. So when I was born into that wealth and prestige. And also my dad, he was a chief in the Yoruba tribe. And in Western culture, we refer to royalty as king, queen, prince, princess, Dutch, that kind of thing. But in African culture, especially West African culture, royalty is referred to as chief and your last name. So my last name, Adeleke, Ade means crown and Leke means is supreme or above. And then my full name is actually Ade Remi, which means the crown has appeased me. So that all comes from my great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather. And then my father was the firstborn son to my grandfather. So he took on the title of chief and obviously the last name. And then, here I am in Nigeria.
So how long did you obviously came to the States at some point, yeah. But being born into wealth and Nigeria is few and far between, right?
Yeah. Nigeria is one of the richest countries, if not the richest country in Africa, on the continent of Africa. And, so there's a lot of natural resources, gold, cocoa, natural gas, you name it, Nigeria has it. And oil, and so, but the thing is, there's so much corruption that the money doesn't trickle down to everyone. I mean, it doesn't trickle down to anybody except for the people at the very, very top. So there's a lot of poverty. And that was one of the reasons why my dad, he left Nigeria originally. He went to the West. He went to school in London, and then he established his businesses in the West, and then he went back to Nigeria years later. But if he stayed in Nigeria, he would have never accumulated the wealth that he was able to accumulate because of all of the corruption in Nigeria. So, to answer your question, yeah, it's a very rich country, but at the same time, because of power, because of corruption, it's not an impoverished country, but there's poverty because of the corruption, right? That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a segregation in wealth. Yeah. I mean, you have the rich, you have the poor, right? There's pretty much no middle class, essentially. Is that kind of how that is?
There's no middle class at all. Like literally, and the crazy thing is I went back to Nigeria in 2018, because I wanted to finish writing my book Transform out there. And you will see like a mansion, like a gorgeous mansion right next to like a hut. It's crazy. Right? Really? So, yeah. But then you go to like places like Victoria Island where we live, which is Victoria Island is like the Beverly Hills of Nigeria, and it's just mansion after mansion after mansion, really nice house compound. A lot of dignitaries live in that area as well, and so there's rich and there's poor, and kids start working when as soon as they can walk and talk. They're selling bananas. They're selling you whatever they can sell you to make a buck for their family.
Really, they're not going to school, right? They're immediately work.
The poor kids, for the most part, aren't, but the rich are. The rich are able to send their kids to boarding school. As a matter of fact, my dad was married years before he married my mom, and there were a lot of all my older siblings that from my dad's first marriage, they all, as soon as they hit like 6, 7, they got sent to the UK for boarding school. And so that's what a lot of wealthy Nigerians do. They send their kids to boarding school in London. Gotcha. I mean, because the education system probably isn't the greatest out there in Nigeria, right? They don't invest a lot of infrastructure into that. Yeah, unless you're at a really high-end private school, which if my brother went to a high-end private school in Nigeria when we were kids. Yeah. Damn, man, that's crazy. That's I mean, and probably you seeing the poverty as well is another thing. How long did you live there in Nigeria? I was there I was born in 82, so I was there from 82 to 87. When I was 5, I left. My dad died. There's a lot more to the story. The Nigerian government, being corrupt, as we talked about, stripped my dad of his most valuable asset, which was it was known as Lagoon Development Project, but now it's known as Banana Island. And it was one of the first man-made islands in the world. My dad had spent millions and millions of dollars. He invested all of his assets into it, so much so that there were times when my mom would say to my dad, "Hey, listen, like you need to put some money in the U.S." because my mom is American. And they met in New York, and then my mom and dad got married, and then my mom moved to Africa with my dad. So my mom didn't trust the Nigerian system, so she would always tell my dad, "Let's put some money in the U.S. So if something bad happens or the government decides to, go crazy on us like they did years ago, at least we have something." But my dad was so loyal to Nigeria and his vision that he said, "No, my priority is this. Once this island is fully developed and there's office buildings on the island and people are able to do business and work there, then we'll be bringing in millions of dollars and then we'll put money in the U.S. But this is my priority right now." And so when he died mysteriously, and then the Nigerian government stripped my dad of that, they stripped him first and then he died a few weeks later, there was nothing left. We had not a cent to our name because all of my dad's assets, our compound that we lived in, all my dad's art, everything had been leveraged and had been used for the island. Wow. And how did you navigate coming to the United States because your mom was still a U.S. citizen, right? Yeah. That's why I was actually born an American citizen abroad. Because of my mom's citizenship, my dad didn't want me to have, for some reason, he didn't want me to be a dual citizen because he didn't want me to miss out on opportunities in America in the future. And the same thing with my brother. My brother, who's a year older than me, he was actually born in America because my dad wanted, he's the firstborn son, my wife, with my mom. And so, he wanted to make sure that, if my brother ever wanted to run for president or something like that, because my dad, he was a visionary. He wouldn't have any issues. So he made sure that my brother was born in the US. But for me, he made sure that I was born with, single citizenship, and that was American citizenship. To him, the most powerful thing you can have is a U.S. passport. Because he knew that if you could get to America with a Nigerian mindset, which is a hard-working mindset, that you can become whatever you need to become, regardless of how much money you have or don't have. And so yeah, because of that, as soon as my dad died, my mom was just like, I don't know this place. I have no connection to Nigeria. All my family is in America. Let me move my boys back to what I know. And that's kind of how we ended up in the States.
So do you think there was some kind of corruption that was ensued into your dad's death?
100%, because there's a lot more to the story, but essentially in the 70s, there was a military coup, and my dad had bought this massive plot of land called Marico, and that's what he was going to use, essentially create his Wall Street, this financial sector. And when the military coup happened, the government took it from him. So years later, after the democracy had been reinstalled, the federal government came back and they acknowledged that America was his, but they also said, hey, we're not going to give it back to you. What do you want back? And so my dad said he wanted this lagoon, which was this body of water. And they laughed at him because they're like, what are you going to do with the lagoon? And him being a forward thinker, figured, if I create something that when it was never nothing, then no one could ever come back and say it was mine or confiscate it like what happened with Marico. And so, when they gave him that, when the federal government awarded him that land, because he spent 8 million pounds for Marico, and that was a compensation, that was his payback, was a water, the deal was done, it was all good. When he started to dredge the foreshore to develop the island, no one said anything. But once the island was fully formed and construction workers started building buildings on the island, and the Lagos state government saw that it actually worked, that's when they came in and said the federal government was never supposed to award you this body of water because this foreshore belongs to the Lagos state government. So that alone was corrupt, because it was like, okay, if that was the case, why you all saw all of this equipment being flown into Lagos from other countries, engineers from the Netherlands, and all of these workers from all around the world coming in to do this. This wasn't done like in a silo, right? Like, why didn't you say something then? Why now? So there was that corruption there where, they wanted him to do all the work so that they could take it from him. And so there was corruption there, and there was also corruption in the sense that my dad, our family bodyguard, to this day, is the manager of the island. So
wow.
Our family bodyguard backstabbed my dad and was essentially, passing off information to some people in the Lagos state government and also the federal government who's behind it too. So in hopes that, he would get a piece of it when it was all said and done. And to this day, he's the manager of my dad's island. So it is a lot more stuff, the way my dad died, and he was essentially, he was bitten by a dog, but then he went to the hospital, and he was given, on an autopsy, essentially he was poisoned. So the medication that he was given was bad medication. That's what ended up killing him ultimately.
Wow, man. That's nuts, dude. That's ultimate corruption. That is, I would even translate that even happening in our world today, in the United States. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're direct, about that. You've been there, done it. Yeah. Man. So you lost your.
I know corruption when I see corruption. I can smell it out. Because it's like, especially in politics, about politicians and what happen and how people manipulate things, and even how media gets involved and sways, opinions and projects an image of something, for a politician that to protect that. We have corruption here too, and that's easy for me to see.
Oh yeah, guaranteed. I mean, it's so easy. Yeah, right. It's like, listen, game can recognize game, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not pulling the wool over my eyes at all with this stuff.
Exactly.
American people who don't know any better, sure. You know what I mean? But somebody who's lived it and has a tale to tell, like, that is very difficult to do. So you're stripped, man. You're stripped of pretty much your royalty there, right? At that moment. When he dies, you're pretty much...
Yeah, all we had was our name. That was it. We just had our name, and we just had... and the funny thing is, too, a lot of my dad's friends disappeared as well. My dad had some powerful friends. They all disappeared as well.
Like, never heard from again, vanished.
Yep, never helped out, never gave my mom a dime. You know what I mean? I remember when my mom when we were kids, we would ride the train with my mom to LaGuardia Airport. And she would go to the terminal for the flights that would fly to Nigeria. And she would essentially wait and see people and give them letters to try and get to people who my mom knew in Nigeria, from my dad's family friends, so that they could help us out. And we never got any help.
Wow.
Yeah, we never got any help. And like I said, my mom would always, tell us when we were kids, we would ask, hey, do you think we'll ever get the money back? And she would always say, don't hold your breath. And then she would also remind us of our name and say, hey, your name is strong, your DNA is strong, we will make it. We just got to do the work.
That's it. And she's right. She had a premonition, and so you come back to America, right? And now you grew up in the Bronx, which is not a easy city to live and grow up in.
Yeah, it's tough.
So you went to royalty to a very rough city in New York. And how was growing up in that?
The early years weren't bad because my mom did a really good job at masking the reality of what had happened. We had this small apartment, but she kept it well kept. The little art that she was able to bring, she peppered that throughout the apartment, and she worked multiple jobs to, provide for my brother and I, and she kept us inside for the most part. And, and I don't even remember, she was able to, put some coins together to get a little car. And so we would just go from the apartment to school, apartment, downtown. My mom was saving money, pennies, because she would get jobs at art galleries and museums in order to be able to get us in for free, so that she could expose us to the arts and expose us to different cultures and educate us. My mom was a teacher, so she worked as a teacher in elementary school, but she also would work side jobs. She had a side job as a creative writer, and she had a side job as as working in museums and art galleries. She was always hustling. And so part of the reason why she took these jobs, as I mentioned, was to expose us to things outside of the environment that we lived in. So we would go downtown in Manhattan, and we would go to the Metropolitan Museum of Natural History and the Schomburg, and she would get free tickets to plays. And so that was kind of what we knew. And then she would also save her money sometimes and take us to a nice restaurant in Manhattan so that she could teach us etiquette and teach us how to pull a chair out for a woman, which forks to use when we're eating and all that stuff. So like I said, she masked the reality the best she could of what had happened. So when I first got there, I didn't really notice much of a difference. And then, also as a kid, regardless of where you are, the world is big. When I go back to the playground or the area where I grew up in, or certain buildings that I went in, they're so small now, right? Because why? Because I'm 6'2", I'm 6'2", and I'm a bigger guy now, right? But before, as a kid, those things seemed so big. So even though our apartment was super small, it was big to me as a kid. Now, it wasn't until like I was about 8 years old, 8, 9, that I began to notice things and be more aware. And it's interesting because I see that with my kids now. I got 4 kids, and you know, my 8-year-old and my 9-year-old. I mean, even before they were 8 and 9, like they're aware of things. They're aware. Oh, he's on TV, or you know, oh, mommy. Like I know what that means. You know what I mean? Like before, when they were kids, you could spell stuff out because they weren't able to really put the words together to sound out what it is. Now we spell stuff out, and they're like, I know what you're saying, right? So they're aware of things. And that's what happened to me. As I got older, I began to become more aware of my surroundings and where I am. And okay, my mom told me that guy that's just buying medicine from another guy. And now I'm like, well, no, that guy's a drug dealer. He's selling drugs to a crackhead. Why not help him? Because I see this crackhead in the park all the time, and he's like strung out, and he looks like a zombie. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, I would go. My mom would allow me to go to the store, you know, as I got older. So I would go out by myself and walk just before the road and see things and see people fighting. And I was like, that's when the reality set in. Hey, I'm not in Kansas anymore. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, so that was a transition. It was a gradual transition. It wasn't jarring for me.
How was it taking the loss of your father? Like, I mean, because I'm sure he was your protector. He was your mentor. He was your hero. You know, like most fathers out there are. Yeah. Like dealing with the loss of your father. Like, how'd you cope with that?
You know, I credit my mom because I was 5. So I didn't really understand death as much, right? Well, I didn't understand death at all. I didn't know what that meant, really, you know? And my mom, and one, too, the second thing is my dad traveled a lot. So even as a kid, when my dad was around, he was always flying to Europe or America, or, you know, flying to China. He was always flying. He would be home and spend time with us, but he was always like traveling the world, you know, different parts of Nigeria, different parts of Africa. So I had gotten used to that. I had gotten used to, you know, mom being around the majority of the time and my dad like going off and then coming back and go. So that was expected. So when my dad died, and I didn't understand death, you know, when my mom told me, she delivered the news, it was just like, in my mind, like, oh, okay, I don't really know what death means, but maybe that means he's just going on another trip and he's gonna come back. But then also another thing that made me think that was my mom, when she delivered the news to my brother and I, again, going back to this idea that my mom masked the reality of what had happened, my mom told my brother and I such a calm way. I'll never forget. There was this red chair, not couch. It was like this big red chair. It was like wide enough to fit like my mom and like both my brother and I. And she put me on her right side, my brother on the left side. And she delivered the news to us so calm, super calm. Just like, your dad's passed away, you know, he's dead and he's not coming back. And she said it in such a calm demeanor and calm way, and us not understanding death, that we just looked at each other like, oh, okay, cool. And then we went back to playing with our toys. And it wasn't that we were malice or had no emotion, it's that my mom wasn't tripping and crying and freaking out. So we weren't tripping. And that's what happens typically when you're in situations in combat too, you know. It's like, if the leader is, at least like not on at the level that I operate on in the teams, but just jumping down to infantry level, because I was you know, a corpsman with the Marines for a bit. If the leader is level-headed in the midst of chaos, like calm breeds calm. Everybody else is going to be calm in the midst of chaos. But if a leader is like jittery or unsure of himself or unsure of the decisions that he's going to make, or in an unlikely event freaking out, that's going to trickle down to the rest of the sled dogs. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah, so, absolutely.
You know, my mom was, I think she told me this years later. She was like, was like, Mom, how did you do? She's like, I kept it together because I knew that if I didn't, then you guys would fall apart. So I had to keep it together so that you guys could keep it together. Because if I did it, then you guys would fall apart, then I would fall apart, then it would just create this never-ending cycle of madness. And so, again, going back to your original question, it didn't faze me when my dad died, because my mom, maintained a very calm demeanor, and I was too young to fully understand that.
That's crazy that she kept such a cool, calm demeanor in a moment of like when she know her world was your worlds were imploding. And she's like, well, hey guys, your father passed, sorry. And you guys went to plan. I mean, that's a true testament to your mom. I mean, of how like level-headed she is and saying, well, now I've got to figure this out for us. And I mean, it sounds like she, did the best she could, really, in the situation, being left with no money and now figuring a way back out to the States, and got there and got to the Bronx. And you grew up, and 9 years old, you started to, kind of see the Bronx for really what it is, right?
Yeah.
Did you go down a different path?
Yeah, that's when I started. That's when that began the start of my downward trajectory. In my mind, it was going to be an upward trajectory, but in retrospect, it was downward. I started, seeking a father to fill my paternal void, and I found a father in the streets. Hip hop culture, all this stuff that was very prominent at the time, late 80s, early 90s, drugs, drug dealers, rapping, all that stuff. So I started out stealing from my mom, and then that grew to stealing from stores, and that grew to getting jobs and stealing from jobs, and then that grew to selling drugs, and then that grew to running high-level scams. So was that part? So you're 9 years old. You just kind of start seeing this little trajectory, the change. I'm sure your mom saw it. Was your brother involved in that as well, or did your brother? No, he stayed straight laced. Yeah, my brother, he had like an awakening around 10 or 11 years old. He stuttered really, really bad as a kid, and I remember one day, I can't remember if he was either 10 or 11. He came back home from school, and he had a bad report card. Not because he was being bad in school, just because he was failing. So he wasn't getting good grades academically. And my mom just broke down crying. She was just like, Vio, like, you're the oldest brother. Like, I really need you to do good in school. Like I can't, like, I need you to succeed. Like, she was crying. And a switch went off in my brother's head. And from that moment on, he was either in school, at the library, or at home. Like, literally, like, that's I would make fun of him. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, but he was locked on, and he ended up like, he was the best one of the both of us. And he ended up going to, doing fantastic in high school. He graduated high school in 3 years. He ended up getting a full ride academic scholarship to Syracuse University to study engineering. Like my dad, that he had a scholarship for his master's, and got his master's in computer science engineering. I mean, That dude, he went down a completely different path than I did. For me, it was just like, I was influenced differently, You
were looking for a father figure. It kind of sounds like you're looking for a man of the house, man of the, somebody to kind of take you underneath their wing and saying, hey man, how do I travel this journey through life? I need somebody. You're looking for something. You're filling a void. You're trying to fill that void that's missing.
Every kid, every boy needs a man to teach him how to be a man. And every girl needs a man to teach her how to be loved by a man. She needs her father to teach her how to be loved by her father. And the biggest arguments that me and my wife have sometimes is because my wife is, her parents divorced, and so she was raised primarily by her mom. And so, and she had a sister. So you have a woman who's raising two women. And so my wife got her example of how to be a mom from her mom, and how to raise girls from the perspective of her mom. And I have to tell my wife, the biggest arguments we have that we always resolve is, hey, Jesse, like, I'm raising these boys to be men. And we can't, they have to be raised differently. And as a man, as a father, I have to have the latitude to do what I need to do. Because I tell you what, when these boys turn 13, 14, 15, they will not listen to you. They will not listen to you. You will not be able to control. The only person that they will listen to is me. And that's the reality.
Yep.
They won't fear you anymore. And I know because when I got 13, 14, I didn't fear my mom anymore. Like when I was smaller, yeah. But when I got some hair on my chin, I wasn't scared of my mom anymore. I didn't listen to mine. And I have a lot of friends, with kids. And I have friends who are single parents, women. And they reach out to me like, this boy, he's not listening. He's not doing this. Like, can you help him? Can you talk to him? Like, I don't know what happened. There's so many examples, of that. And so,
you can't help them. You can't help them. I mean, you can't traject yourself into their world and go, all right, well, now they're going to listen to me because nothing's going to change. They're not going to respect their mom. Their mom's got to step up and put the man shoes on and do what's necessary for them to respect their mother. If she's a single mother raising them by himself, because it's night and day. I have 4 kids as well. And 2 of my kids are with a previous wife and 2 are with another previous wife. But my 2 older kids, man, run amok, man. They run amok over there. And she calls me like, hey, can you do something about this? I'm like, no, I absolutely cannot. I go, what do you want me to do? I go, if I discipline for your house, they're still going to act the same because they're still not going to respect you. I was like, you got to gain control of them.
But at some point, once they get to a certain age, there is no regaining control of it. That's the thing.
You got to start small, man. You got to start small.
You got to get them young. That's why, like kids have to have a healthy fear of their parents, both parents, until a certain, both parents forever, right? And then, but for dads, for sure, they got to have a healthy fear, because if they don't have a healthy fear of their parents, they're not going to have a healthy fear of authority, which means they're going to be out of control and be more inclined to break the rules and commit crimes and do things that's going to end up landing them in prison. Sometimes I have to tell my wife, I was like, babe, I'd rather discipline my sons now, than they have to get disciplined by a judge.
Yeah, 100%. Because you went down that route.
Yeah.
You at 9 and 10, 11, you started going down the route and you found kind of, I guess, some solace really in the gang. Is that right?
No, it wasn't gang. I always hated gangs. So I never did the gang thing. It was just money. It was just hustling. It was, getting money and it all came back to affirmation, right? It all came back to, why did I want to get money? I wanted to get money so that girls would like me, my boys would like me, respect me, so that I can get the affirmation that I never got from my father. That's what it always boiled down to. And and you see that with pro athletes, who grew up in single parent homes, where they're buying, they get this contract and they're buying these Lamborghinis and these Bentleys and they're going to clubs and making it rain and then, doing all of this crazy stuff with money. And then when they retire, what is it, 70% of NFL players end up broke after they retire? It's a few years after they retire, 80% of NBA players. And they have nothing to show for why did they do all of those things when they had the money? Because they were seeking that affirmation that they never got from their father. That's why I would say it's always important for fathers to affirm their children, even in little things, let them know, hey, that's awesome. You know what I mean? You're freaking great. You're going to, and I did that this morning with my kids. I went on a business trip yesterday, and this morning I came out, hugged my kids. I was like, you're great. You're going to be a great man. I love you so much. My youngest son looked at me like, thanks, Dad. You know what I mean? And it's those little seeds that get into their head. And now my son doesn't have to go have a friend affirm him. Why? Because my dad affirmed me. The most important person in my life, important man in my life affirmed me. So I don't need to seek affirmation from a relationship or whoever. And I do the same thing with my daughter as well. I affirm her. You're beautiful. You're awesome. Daddy loves you. You know, daddy's always here for you. But so that she's not trying to go get that from some dude that's abusing her and she's going back to him. You know what I mean? So a lot of what I did was unconsciously to receive affirmation from people because I didn't have a dad to give it to me. And so I know some people go the gang route and they like to get affirmation that way. But for me, it was like get money. And so, like I said, I started out small. Hey, stealing a bag of chips from the store, stealing some candy, passing it off to my friends, selling it to some kids. Oh, you the man, Remi, you got this. Cool. Got some money in my pocket, got some affirmation. Then getting a job. I was working at the sneaker store called Athlete's Foot. Bad name for a sneaker store, but a sneaker store. And, you know, just when credit cards had started to be, this is the beginnings of when, because before that, I can't remember what year, it was like 95, 96, everything was all cash for the most part, and credit cards got introduced. And what I would tell people who came into the store, I was like, if you buy these sneakers, if the sneakers were $80, I say, hey, if you buy these sneakers for $50, give me cash. If you give me cash, they use it for $50. It's like, what? I was like, yeah, so it's a sale that we're running. And they would give me $50, I would pocket the cash, not even ring it up at the register. I would say, hey, you can't keep the box. I would keep the box and grab their old shoes, make them put their old shoes in the box, and then write defected on them and put them in the defect section. And then I would do that at school. So everybody knew me in school as a dude that was selling sneakers. You want the new sneakers at a cheaper price? Come to me, give me cash, and I'll get them for you. Hey, Remi's the man. And I was getting affirmation from girls, God, I was always with the freshest new sneakers. And then because I now was making money, I was always, with the freshest clothes. Girls like affirmation, and then that progressed to selling drugs. I could make more money. So I'm in high school now, selling drugs, get out of high school, still selling drugs. And then from there, it's like, okay, I want to make more money. The Bronx has too many drug dealers and it's too much competition. I'm not trying to get in any drug war. So, and I'm not trying to go to jail. So you know what? Let me get into the cell phone hustling thing. Cell phones just popped up and became a thing. So I got a little gig at a cell phone company. I got an activation license, so I was able to activate three cell phone lines on one line of credit, and the phones were staying on for 30. At the end of the 30-day mark, the person who received the bill, they had another 30 days to pay it, and then if it wasn't paid in 60 days, then at the 90-day mark it would cut off. So I was selling unlimited cell phone plans before they existed because I would get people's credit information from a buddy of mine who worked at a hospice clinic where people were dying, get their credit. I'd get like tons of people. And on one person's line of credit, I would activate 3 phones. I would sell a phone for between $300 to $900 depending on the phone. And people and I was selling to drug dealers and they loved it because their phone would be on for 90 days. They get rid of it, get a new phone. And so that's where I was making way more money than selling drugs. I was making crazy money. And
less risk.
And less risk. That's right. Until people started getting caught and going to federal prison, then I had to kind of dial it back a little bit, but I was still making a lot of money. And,
wait, people got caught doing this and went to federal prison?
Oh yeah, it's a federal crime. Go ahead.
What makes it a federal crime?
Dude, you're stealing people's personal information.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. No, I forgot. I was just like, wait, what makes it a felony? I mean, I don't know today. I don't know if that would be a felony. That would be I take it in misdemeanor.
No, it's today is a felony.
I'm messing with you. I'm just talking about the nature of where we're at today. Drug dealers get out the same day before even cops get done with the paperwork. Mm-hmm. They're still doing the paperwork. Guys walking out the door.
Yeah, it's ridiculous now.
Yeah, they're crazy.
It's stupid.
So did you know somebody get a felon? Did you know somebody personally get caught doing this?
There were people in my office that got caught and got charged.
Wow.
And so that's when I dialed it back. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing this as much as I used to anymore. I'm kind of regressing, and at the same time, I started a record company because I had the money, so I was taking that money and funneling it into a record company. So, as a matter of fact, I keep this on my desk as a reminder for those who can't see. It's the first album. It's a compilation album. This is me right here in that sports jacket with the collar shirt.
Oh, shit.
All the songs. I signed all of these artists. I had some executives that I hired who worked for me on the record company. And so all of that money that I was making was going into studio time. It was going into getting the artists the shows and getting them travel to shows and clothes and all of this stuff. And so my plan, I had an exit plan because I had an exit plan before people started getting caught because I knew that, nothing lasts forever. And so my exit plan was essentially, hey, funnel all of this money, invest all of this money into the record company, create some albums. And then once I have a solid, sell those albums, and so that I can create a fan base for my artists, and then try and sign a label deal with a major record company. So that was the goal. That was my exit plan. And that was what a lot of famous rappers were selling drugs. And then like Jay-Z David Dash, like it's known that he sold drugs to fund his the music business. And his plan was, once my music business takes off, I'm done with the drugs and I'm going to go straight. A lot of drug dealers who turn rappers have done it that way. And so that was my plan. Because I knew that if I stayed in it, I was going to end up dead or in prison. And so, I did that. But unfortunately, in 2002, December 2002, the walls came crashing down. I sold this drug dealer like 20, 30 phones, which there's a long story to that, but I won't bore you with it. And those 20 to 30 phones cut off in like a week. And it was supposed to stay open for 90 days. And so I was scared to death for two reasons. One, because I was like, holy crap, my job might be on me and I'm gonna go to federal prison because the phones have never cut off this early. And then two, this dude's gonna kill me. So he literally came to my house and threatened my life. He was like, hey, if you don't have me my money, because what he did was, which I knew, he didn't tell me he was gonna do this initially, but I figured he was doing this, is he would buy the phones for me for like $300, $400, $500, and then he started selling them for double the price. So he had sold those phones to other people. And so that's where the problem was created.
Sure, because I heard his reputation.
Yeah. And so I made him his money back. I already had money, so I gave him some money I had, and then, made him the rest back. And then after that, I was just like, all right, this needs to stop for real. So stop hustling, and I just went 100% trying to sell my record company, trying to get a label deal.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 19.
19? Okay. So you pretty much cut your phone deal, business short, and was like, yep, I'm kind of done. This is kind of hitting the end. Because you're right. The federal government was probably onto you, or somebody was onto you. Inevitably, if you do it long enough, you're gonna get caught.
You're gonna get caught. Everybody.
You're gonna get caught, right? So, and then you shifted the gears, which is actually probably a better gear to shift into, is legitimate work with your record studio. You had your first CD, which I don't know who has a CD player anymore. That's almost like a record player. You held that up. I was like, holy shit, man, we see a CD on here. Like, this is amazing.
I keep it on my desk as a reminder of where I came from, and
it's a great reminder. It keeps you humble, keeps you motivated, because you don't want to go back to that place.
Not at all. We tried to sell it, tried for months, nothing happened. Money ran out. So I went, and I was spending money to try and get it off the ground, and, it just didn't work out, and the money ran out. And then finally, in June of 2002, which was about 6-7 months later, is when I was like, all right, I gotta get out of here. And that's when I joined the Navy.
Really? So it wasn't, 9/11 wasn't the catalyst that started your military career, because and correct me if I'm wrong, I hear this often, is, in broad America, people are like really patriotic, but in, lower income, poverty ridden cities and towns and stuff like that, they don't really see America as the same light that middle class, upper class sees it, right? It's really like you guys against America.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I didn't again, there's a lot more to the story. People could check it all out in my book, but in short, the idea to join the military wasn't mine.
Whose was it?
People can read the book to find out.
Oh, come on, one nugget. Okay.
But when it came to me, when I was presented with the idea, I battled with it because I hated the police. I hated the U.S. government. I associate anybody in a uniform as the police, whether you were Marine Corps, Navy, Army, Coast Guard, firefighter, and paramedic, you were the police to me. And I hated authority because I didn't have a person to teach me the importance of authority and the importance of respecting authority. So when I was presented with it, I scoffed at the idea. And then finally, I took some time and I was just like, well, Remi, look at your life. What has your life amounted to? Your brother's in college. You haven't gone to college. What else are you going to do with your life? You have nothing to show for it. And so that was when the decision came. But yeah, like you said, the environment I was raised in is not the most patriotic environment. You know what I mean? And so I didn't join out of patriotism. I joined out of survival. I'm patriotic now. I love America now. You know what I mean? I love America, because I want to be where I am now without the opportunities that America has afforded me. I know I get messages constantly from people in Nigeria. Please, sir, please get me into America. I worked so hard and I cannot become anything in my country. You could work 10 times harder than anybody on the planet in Nigeria, and still because of the corrupt system and because of the structure of the government, you won't progress. You won't progress. But here in America, if you have that hard-working mindset and you put in the work and you focus, you can come in poor. I know so many immigrants who come in poor and who are millionaires, rich. Oh. I know a lot of Nigerians in America who are most of my Nigerian friends are doctors, lawyers, engineers, super successful entrepreneurs. And these are first generation Nigerians, some second generation Nigerians because their parents and grandparents instilled that in them. And so and a lot of my friends, they've come here with nothing. Their parents came here with nothing. But they made it.
So in Nigeria, hard work does not pay off. Hard work is just survival.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just how you survive, is hard work.
They hand them out. You work hard, you still gonna live hand them out. Because the system is not in place to reward performance.
Well, it's a communist country.
No, Nigeria is a democracy.
Oh, is it? Well, you're right. It is a democracy.
It's a democracy,
but kind of a really corrupt democracy.
It's a corrupt
yeah. It's what happens when you take middle class out.
Yeah.
Sure.
When you don't have people when you have checks and balances in place to keep greed in check.
Yeah, I would even probably say that's a hard line even calling it a democracy because there's really no checks and balances. It's like we say, you do. Yeah. That's crazy. It's the world, man. The world outside the United States, people have never been outside this world.
Yeah.
Don't even fucking understand, man. Yeah. They don't even understand.
I argue with people, especially these kids out of college. Like,
oh,
what do you know? This and that. It's like, dude, have you ever been to freaking Yemen? Have you been to freaking, Vietnam? Have you been to Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia? The list goes on and on. I've been all over the world. I've been all over Europe. I've been all over the Middle East. I've been to different parts of Africa. I've been to 8 different parts of Asia. Like, you have no clue what the real world is like until you actually get into the real world. A lot of these kids know is just what they've learned in school. This bubble, what they've gotten in this bubble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is, anyway, I don't know.
No. I mean, California, they think California is just, oh man, it's so rough here. Like, are you fucking kidding me? like, go outside of California. You see, even in the United States, see how rough it is. But we're going to get into that in a second. We're going to take just a 3-minute break, man. Starting to float away.
Sorry, bro.
Oh, shoot. So in 2002, man, you joined the Navy, not because of patriotism, because of survival, man. You kind of got in a little situation and you're like, man, I need to get the hell out. And you joined the Navy. What was your vision going into the Navy? What did you want to do?
I wanted to be a SEAL. So years earlier, I had seen The Rock. And that was like the first time I was exposed to Navy SEAls. And I want to say shortly after that, this documentary came out called Buds 234. And so I saw that, I was like, oh, cool. And I said to myself, if I ever turn my life, it was like a far-fetched idea. It's like me saying right now, like, if I ever get the opportunity, I'm gonna run for president. Chances of that happening is slim to none. And so that was like the context of how I said it back then. I was like, if I ever get out the hood, I'm gonna be a Navy SEAL. But it was like, I knew in my mind, I was like, I'm never getting to this place. And so when I finally went to the Navy recruiter's office, that's what I told my recruiter I wanted to do. I was like, hey, I want to be a SEAL. And she laughed at me. And first thing she had me do was take a practice ASVAB test. I took that. I passed high enough to get into the Navy, but not high enough to be getting a SEAL training. You gotta have like a really high score. And then she ran my background and found out I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. I had a warrant in New York and a warrant in New Jersey, which scared the life out of me. And I ran, bolted towards the door. She stopped me and she asked me if I had a suit, and I said no. She asked me if I had like some nice clothes. I said, I'm sure I can find something. And she said, come back tomorrow. I was like, for what? And she said, just come back tomorrow. She was from the Bronx. She joined the Navy out of the Bronx, and then she went and did her time in the fleet, and then she went back to be a recruiter because it was her home. And she wanted to help people who came from where she came from. And so I came back the next day. She was in a dress uniform. She took me to both judges, a judge in Jersey, judge in New York. So she told me, hey, this kid's made mistakes, but he has potential. He wants to join the military after an act of war. 9/11 is taking place, which I didn't. She was just saying that. And the judges were both like, hey, if this guy's serious about joining the Navy after an act of war, we'll expunge his record and clear his warrants. And so both judges expunged my record. And then she went a step further, fudged paperwork, sneaked me into the Navy, and that's how I got into the Navy. When I got to boot camp, a Navy SEAL came and played a video of Navy SEALs jumping from planes, scuba diving, driving dune buggies with long hair, shooting guns. And I was like, yeah, the idea had been there, but I was like, now I really, really want to do this. The only problem was, like I said, I didn't have the ASVAB score. I was super skinny and I couldn't swim. So I had to get through boot camp. Then went through A school. I went through the Corpsman A school. And then after that, I got to my first command, which was Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton. And it was there where I was like, I put the pedal to the metal, man. Like, I asked my LP, I was like, hey, can you change my schedule? Because I worked in the family practice clinic. And so she was like, sure. So I worked 4 hours, the morning clinic for 4 hours from like 8 to 12, 7:15 to like 11:15, something like that. Then I had 4 hours off to train in the afternoon. And then I would come back and work the night clinic until like the last patient left, which was sometimes 8 o'clock, sometimes 7 o'clock, depending on how many patients we had. And it was awesome, man, because I got the ASVAB for Dummies book. I bought the Buds documentary, the DVD cassette, CD tape, cassette, not cassette, but the DVD set. And I watched that video, that documentary religiously, built a workout plan. And I would go to the gym. I didn't have anybody to train me. The gym was always empty because it was the gym, it was a Navy gym next to the hospital, and it was on a Marine base, and nobody really worked out from the hospital. And so it was like I had it to myself. I just started creating workouts from what I saw in the videos. And then like I would run 3 miles to the pool, uphill to the pool, jump in, try to figure it out, run 3 miles back. Eventually I humbled myself and asked the lifeguard to talk me through the stroke, and he talked me through it. And I studied the ASVAB book, and like within a year of checking into the command, I was checking out. I had totally qualified to go to Buds. I got my ASVAB scores freaking muscled up. I did 100 push-ups. I went from not being able to do any push-ups, any pull-ups, to doing 100 push-ups on the screening test, 30 pull-ups on the screening test. Passing the swim, passing the run. Like that was that determination, and I put in the work and got orders to Buds, man. And that was the path. That's kind of how it all happened, from me getting in and saying I wanted to be a SEAL to me getting in and training.
Wow, dude, that's a crazy story, because hard work work pays off, man. Time and time and time again, man. Yeah. If you're willing to do some sacrificing and put in hard work, it's going to pay off.
Yeah. And again, that's that Nigerian mindset. The Nigerian mindset is, and this is deep into every Nigerian kid, especially American, or especially thank you, excuse me. Especially the kid whose parents are from Nigeria and they live in either US or UK. There is no, to Nigerian parents, a bachelor's degree is the equivalent of a GED. You're not looked upon with respect unless you have a master's degree in Nigerian households. And hard work is because Nigerian parents are like, hey, I know what it's like in Nigeria. I bust my butt to get here to the United States, and you will bust your butt and become something great. And that's beaten to every Nigerian kid that I know. You know what I mean? And so 1 + 1 = 2. And that's how I was raised. Hey, my mom would always tell me, whatever you do it right the first time. Give 110%. Don't half-ass anything. And that was so ingrained in me that when I got to the point where I had the opportunity to train, I was like, I'm gonna put in the work. And 1 + 1 = 2. I did the extra hard work, I got in the SEAL training. I could have made the choice and be like, oh, I can't swim, it's gonna take too long to learn, like I'm skinny, the ASVAB test is too hard, yada, yada, yada. And nobody would know my name. But I didn't become a victim. I became a victor. And that's one thing I try to tell people all the time. It's like, you have whatever you want to do in this country, you can do it, but you got to put your mind to it. And sometimes the path is not easy, but that's fine. Maybe you got to find another path. Maybe you got to find a path around the door instead of through the door. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, man, that's how I ended up in SEAL training, man.
Dude, that's motivating as fuck, man. Really.
Yeah.
Just from the point where you came from, what you've gone through as a kid, and then where you're at now, and the decision of like, I've got to change my life, dude. That's motivating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you went to Buds, man, and did you make it your first time?
I got, long story short, I ended up making it through Hell Week, making it through first phase, got the dive phase, got prideful. Instead of working on what I needed to work on the weekends, I was out partying and chasing girls and telling girls I was SEALs down at the Gaslamp District. I was a SEAL. And on the weekends, the instructors would show up on their off time to help, train guys who had deficiencies. And I was too hungover while I was in some other girl's apartment, waking up during the time when I should have been waking up to go to remediation. And so ended up going to, I failed my first 2 swims in dive phase. Then I failed a dive test. It's like a dive test called the tread, where you got to do all this, you got to tread water with dive gear and all that stuff. Failed that 4 times. And then went to academic review board. And it was like, yo, you've made it through Hell Week. You clearly have what it takes physically, but the water, you don't have what it takes as it relates to the water. And so because of that, we got to kick you out of training. So I got kicked out of training, got sent back to Camp Pendleton. This time I was in 1st Marine Division, Battalion 1-4. I was in the Scout Sniper Platoon for a little bit, and then I went from Scout Snipers to 81s. Did about a year and a half there, did a deployment, came back, and then I got back to Buds. Got back to Buds in a year and a half. I was determined. I had learned from my mistakes. I had taken on the mantra, failure is only a failure if you don't learn from it, but if you learn from it, it's a lesson. And the lesson that I got out of getting kicked out of SEAL training is, hey, don't show up to anything unprepared. And when you become successful, remain humble. And I took that with me into my second go round, started day one all over again, went through Hell Week again, made it through Hell Week again.
Did you that year and a half? Did you work on your weaknesses? Because obviously,
the day after I got kicked out of SEAL training, I was prepared training for the tread. I was training for the stuff that I should have been training for. When I was in training, I was training then, like the very next day after and I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to go back to SEAL training. I didn't know if and when I was going to be able to go back, if I had the opportunity to go back. But I knew that if the opportunity presented itself, I was going to be prepared.
That is correct. Yeah, because Bud Train's going to highlight what you're good at. And it is going to make a big, shiny spotlight on all your weaknesses. And they're all going to come through, man.
Yeah, 100%.
That is crazy that you failed, but then day after, you're like, you know what? I have to look at myself in the mirror and guess what? This is your fault. I failed because I didn't put in the work, man. Yeah. And you went back and did the work.
Yeah. And that was the first time in my adult life I took responsibility for my actions. Every other time before that, it was like, oh, it's this person's fault. Or it's the man's fault. Or it's this person's fault. It's her fault. I never took responsibility for my actions. But that was the first time I took responsibility for my actions. It's like, okay, now and that's how you become victorious in life. One, you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, it's my fault. It's only then when you can truly start working on the issue. Because if you don't acknowledge that it was that the reason why you're in the pit that you're in is because you're the one that walked into that pit. If you can't acknowledge that first, you'll never be able to work on how to get out the pit. Because you won't have the humility to see a way or find a way to work yourself out of the pit. And so, that's why I try to tell people all the time, take ownership. Jocko talks about that all the time. Ownership. Take ownership for your mistakes. Take ownership for your screw ups. Take ownership, and I took ownership. And like I said, I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to go back. And I didn't have to start training right away. And that was another thing. Like, it's like, how bad, I tell people all the time, whether they want to be an actor, director, whether they want to be, whatever, you fill in the blank. Like, how bad do you want it? And do you want it in a way where when the light's on you, you're going to start doing the work? Or do you want it where the light is not on you and the light's nowhere near close to where you are, but you're going to start doing the work then and there? It's about, my mom used to always tell me when I was a kid, never let them see you cook. You always want people to show up and everything's laid out, full spread, food smells good, everything's done, and you're dressed to the nines, like nothing happened. Never let them see you cook. And so that's what I did, man. I started training right there because I wanted it. And I wasn't going to wait for, let me get to my first command and see if I get the opportunity to come back. Let me do a deployment first and then I'll start training there. Nope. And that's the way it is in the film and TV business, which I work in now. It's like, it's expensive to make a movie. It's very expensive to make a movie. And, there's a movie I'm going to be directing after the writer's strike. And it's a $35 million movie. And
we're going to get into that.
Yeah,
we're going to get into that. We're not there yet, man. We are not there yet.
I'm just making a point here, but, what I tell people is that no independent financier is going to give me that money if I didn't believe in the project enough to invest my own money in it first. The short film, The Unexpected, which is a prequel to this feature film, cost me about $150,000 of my own money. Cash. That's not including sweat equity. Cash. Okay. Then there's the sweat equity. Then there's the time. Then there's all of this other stuff. Then there's the writing and screenplay, trying to go out to festivals and traveling and trying to get eyes on and all that other stuff. So when I finally got to, and then I had to write the screenplay on spec, to prove to a financier that I could make this movie. There's a lot of things that I had to do before I got this opportunity. Now, I could have been like, you know what? I'm not going to do a short film, or I'm not going to write the screenplay. I'm going to wait until I find the right financier that's going to, believe in me and that's going to give me the money to make this kind of film that I want to make. That would have never happened. I got the financiers and the producers and everybody attached because I did all of the work in the dark.
Yep. Never seemed to let you cook.
Yeah. I proved to people that I believe in this project so much that I'm going to put up my thing. How can I go to somebody and ask them to give me $35 million to make something that I say I believe in when I ain't even going to invest my own money and time into the same thing that I believe in? They're going to laugh at me.
Very true.
So, that all comes back from SEAL training. Anyway, I get back to SEAL training, make it through SEAL training. It was a kick in the nuts. It sucked.
Was the second time just as hard as the first time?
No, it's easier because you already know everything. You already know. I mean, for me, it was easier because I already knew what to expect. I already knew when we were going to serve torture, knew when the beatdown sessions were coming, and knew how long to run. When they say, we're going to run you 12 miles, I knew it was really going to be 6 miles. Like, I knew all the mind games, so it was just like, just go through it, endure the pain, and got through it and went to a team and, had a great time, spent about 8 years in the teams and got to do some cool stuff. Was a medic, was a HUMINT guy, which stands for human intelligence. So I got to kind of do some sneaky peeky spy stuff on the side and run sources and just,
So what was one of the coolest missions you were on, man? I mean, you talked about Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Africa, Man,
there was a lot. I mean, I got from the best of both worlds because I got to build intelligence via sources and running sources, but then I got to kick down doors. So, I mean, as far as like me saying everything was exciting to me. I mean, you got to remember, I'm a kid from the Bronx. You know what I mean? I'm from the hood. You know what I mean? Who couldn't swim. And I'm like I'm like the 50th African American Navy SEAL, around the 50th African American Navy SEAL in the history of the SEAL teams. So it's like every day is like exciting to me. I would say the most exciting moment wasn't necessarily a mission. I had some cool missions and some cool stuff that I was blessed to be able to do. But the coolest thing was I'll never forget Cinco de Mayo, particular year. I'm in this country on the CIA compound, and they had like a pool that had turned this dictator's palace into a CIA compound, and they left the pool in there, and they had like beach chairs around the pool, and it was night, and it was Cinco de Mayo. I was sipping Coronas with 2 CIA agents, and we're just talking. And I just remember looking around this pool, and the pool had these beautiful lights underwater. So like there was lighting in the water, and just the palm trees around the tree, and it was like the quiet. Like I said, you hear gunfire out because there's firefights like way out in the distance, so you hear gunfire out of it. I'm sipping Coronas with 2 CIA agents and another SEAL, and I'm just like, this is crazy. That for me was the coolest thing.
That was cool.
I got to kick down doors and do some fun stuff, but that was like, man, how the hell did you get here?
I mean, especially looking at your life and your journey, man. Yeah. What was I get it, man. You running, gunning, and the whole 9 yards, man. I mean, you're American badass, like just for real, What was like one of your, like with your team guys, I know sitting by the pool and stuff like that, because we want to touch a little bit on that, on your SEAL, kind of something that you did in it. What would be like one of the things that you could go and tell us, like, hey man, this is like this is the mission I could talk about.
Well, I can't really talk about most of the missions I've been on, but I would just say the coolest thing that, was doing direct action. I can be general. And I know because I freaking had to sign all this paperwork and, don't want to get this podcast pulled. But essentially, yeah, man.
I don't want to get the podcast pulled either.
I would just say the coolest, just to kind of like be general, but still give you something for the audience is, I remember being on a particular deployment. We did Vampire Ops, which essentially is the entire deployment. We slept during the daytime, and we would get up at like around 5 p.m. I do my intelligence meetings and stuff like that. And then we would go out at night, and to just be able to operate under the cover of darkness, sneaking into a bad guy's house, walking an urban area and nobody's up, it's 2 a.m, and then just doing ninja stuff, like climbing into up scaling a building to try and get in through the roof. You know what I mean? Having guys cover down on areas. That was cool. That was fun. I always wore a black ski mask on so I was like a Batman type thing.
You were born in darkness, and darkness is your friend. Darkness is my ally.
Man. So I would just to be general, like doing DAs was cool, man, with my boys, just getting out there and, hitting targets.
That's
and going after very evil people. You know what I mean? Like the cool thing about being on the entire, people say, oh, well, all you guys do is you're mindless, robots. They tell you where to go and to go kill, and you go kill. And the reality is that's not the game, man. Like, and
well, who the fuck says that?
People some people who've been educated in the college system, and they're like, I know that you guys are. But,
so they don't know shit.
Yeah. And so, I read intelligence reports. I've seen video feeds, and I was privy to a lot of information. And we couldn't go on a mission unless information had been vetted to the 10th degree. You know what I mean? And so I say all that to say, to be able to do that, get that information on extremely evil people. I remember one guy we went after. Again, I'm being general here, and he would recruit kids to be suicide bombers. And he was responsible for the death of a lot of kids, teenagers, but also young boys, 10, 11, to be suicide bombers. So to be able to build an intelligence package on that guy, track him, have people, collect information on him for me, and then be able to go snatch that dude up, in the middle of the night, and bring him to justice. Like that. Like you can't put a price tag on that. And going back to the Bronx, I saw a lot of crazy stuff in the Bronx. You know what I mean? We call we call it bullies now, but there was some wicked people that did some crazy stuff to innocent people. I mean, I remember seeing people get stomped out, beat up. I remember I was a kid. I was about 8, 9 years old. It's around the time when my change started happening. I got beat to a pulp on a basketball court by a guy who just got out of prison. He was like 32, a 19-year-old kid, and a kid my age. Just because I was like bantering back and forth with the kid my age while playing basketball against. And so I always hated bullies. I always hated people who preyed on the weak, who preyed on those who can't protect themselves. And so I say all that to say, you know, to be able to now be in a position where I can go after those bullies and like be the one that's like, oh, you messing with these people? Hey, come pick on me now. You know, to be hey, what's up? What you got to say now? And with my black mask on, you know, long gun with my suppressor right in their face. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, you know, like that's.
Yeah, it was. So I flew UAVs, man, for JSOC. Oh, I was. So I was attached to you guys for a long fucking while, man. Long while collecting intelligence on nefarious fucking dudes. You know, and and then you guys did the job what you had to do. Yeah. You know, did that with MARSOC as well. ODA guys. You know, it was good. It was good.
You know the deal. Yeah, you know the deal.
Yeah, that's so I don't talk about my experience, but a little bit about yours. But no, it's fucking the best job I had by fucking far in the military. And I loved it. So you did 8 years. Is that what you did? 8 years in teams?
Yeah.
Why only 8 years, man? How come you didn't do the 20, man? You're at that mark.
I did 13 years total. So I did one. Obviously my first command was 1 year, but then you got boot camp, which is like 3 months. And then I was in buds for a year before I got dropped. So that's 2 years. And then I went to first Marine Division for a year and a half. And I went back to training for 8 months before I made it through. So that's about 4 years, right? So and I did 13 total. So it was about 8.5, 9 years. So I did 13 years total. And then I got out. And
why did you get out? I mean, you did 13 years. You're at that. Yeah. You're over the point of making a decision and getting out. This should have been a 20-year career. So right?
A lot of people tried to, my chief, my platoon chief tried to talk me into staying in for the retirement. But, I just, again, like my dad, I just see things. It's hard for me to just see a year out. I'm able to, I've been blessed with this gift to be able to see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years out, right? And so my first son was born in 2014. My second son was born in 2015. And then in 2016, January is when my contract was expiring. And so I was just having a dad die when I was 5. I just wanted to be home with my boys, so that was a big part of it. And then my last year and a half, I started doing schooling, and I was in grad school. My wife's brother is a very wealthy entrepreneur, and he's connected to a lot of other wealthy dudes. So he started hiring me out to do consulting, taking special operations principles and translate into business. So I was doing that on the side. And then when I got out, my plan, that's why I was getting my master's, so that I could not just have the special operations, resume, but also have the educational backing as well. And that was, I wanted to build a big business. I wanted to build a consulting business like my dad built big business. I didn't want to work for anybody anymore. I felt like the majority of my adult life had been military. And before I kind of lost adulthood and moved into being a senior, I wanted to have at least another half of my adult years be outside of the military, with me trying to build my businesses and on my own. And so that was the decision. And I got out in January 2016. And then, I was in grad school in May 2016, still in grad school in May 2016. And that's when I got the call to work on Transformers. And that was kind of what started my
okay, hold on. How did you get the call to work on Transformers?
So there was, long story short, a guy who was a SEAL, worked in Hollywood. He gave my contact to this woman who worked on Michael Bay films, and Michael Bay was looking for a former SEAL with my background to just do a one-day shoot on Transformers 5. And so, like I said, I was just writing papers. I was using my post 9/11 GI Bill. I wasn't working because I had stacked up a large savings before I got out. So between my savings and my post 9/11 GI Bill, some other jobs that I was doing for my brother-in-law, that was, I didn't need to work. I was able to just focus on school. So when I got the call, I was available. I was like, yeah. And I think they were trying to find some other people too, but they weren't available. And so I was the SEAL that was available. So she was like, all right, you need to be in LA tomorrow to work. So that's kind of how it all happened. And then that one day turned into 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks turned into 6 months. And that's what kind of kicked off my career in Hollywood.
Wow. So you were just slotted to work one day, and that turned into 3 months and turned into 6 months, 3 weeks.
3 weeks, and then 3 weeks turned into 6. At the end of the third week, the casting director came up to me and she was like, hey, Michael Bay wants to keep you on for the rest of the film. What's your schedule? And are you available to work on for the rest of the film? And I was like, yeah, I'm available. I'm not doing anything. And paying me good money, I'll take it. And that's kind of how it all happened, man. And so yeah, and then once you work on a project like that, then, other opportunities present themselves because you meet people on set and people hear your name and they want to hire you to consult. So I started consulting on more commercials and TV series and stuff like that. And then finally, after I wrote my first book, Transform, which is my memoir, that's when I was like, you know what? I'd write scripts, because I would get scripts before I would work on these projects or to consider being a consultant on these projects. I was like, man, this script is getting made. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, I know I could write something like comparable, if not better than this. And so let me teach myself screenwriting. Going back to the whole training thing, like, hey, I want to be a SEAL. I don't have somebody to teach me how to be a SEAL. Teach me how to train for buds. Let me train myself. Let me get it done. So I bought the masterclass subscription, and I watched all that different writing, Aaron Sorkin, and all of the, David Mamet and Shonda Rhimes, just all their classes on screenwriting. And then I, subscribe to a bunch of screenwriting YouTube channels and learn a bunch of stuff there. And then, before I knew it, I was writing screenplays. And because I wanted to be able to write scripts and produce content instead of be the guy that gets hired to show somebody how to make it more real and more authentic, and then give away all my knowledge to somebody who's making millions of dollars, and here I am making a couple $1,000. And so, I taught myself screenwriting, and then, wrote a couple scripts, and then I finally got hired to adapt the book into a limited series. That project got me into the WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America. And then from there, my career just started growing. And then, after some projects and some opportunities, that's when I was like, okay, I want to learn how to direct. So I'm going to watch a bunch of videos on directing, and then I'm going to actually go direct something. And I directed my short film, The Unexpected, which was my first film on organ harvesting. And then, I directed another short, and I just directed another short. And then, it just snowballed into now where I'm set up to direct a feature film. So wow. That was a path.
That's crazy. How was it working on the set of Transformers with, big names, like Mark Wahlberg? I mean,
one thing I learned is that, if you look at them celebrities, because I've had, I worked with Ryan Reynolds on Six Underground. I've worked with a lot of different celebrities. And one thing I learned is that if you just treat them like a normal person, at the end of the day, they all just want to be treated like a normal person.
Yeah, they don't want to be treated like celebrity.
Yeah, it's all about how you view, celebrity is not something that that projects out from a person, in my opinion. It's something that people project onto a person. So if you see somebody and you're acting, oh my God, they're so-and-so. That's you projecting that onto them.
Yeah.
But if you're just like, hey, something, how you doing? Hey, I'm doing good. Okay, cool. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the shot. You go with that? Yeah, let's go do it. If you're like that, then Celebrities don't want to be treated like celebrities. Well, at least most celebrities that I've met don't want to be treated like. They just want to be treated like normal people. Because at the end of the day, the reality is they are normal people. They're not superhumans. You know what I mean?
They put their pants on the same way I do. Same way you do. The difference is
more people know their name. And that's the definition of celebrity to me. It's, it's like you have a person like myself where not too many people know my name, and you got a person like Ryan Reynolds where like millions more people. That's the only difference is more people know your name. And because more people know your name, you get paid more money to do what you do.
Yeah, I like Ryan Reynolds as an actor, man. He's funny.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
He's funny. 6 Underground was an amazing movie too, man. Yeah, what'd you do on 6 Underground?
I was a consultant on that.
Okay. For, realistic tactics and stuff like that?
Yeah, tactics and action and all that, yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, I got to meet Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. I wouldn't much response. He's a good dude.
Yeah, good. He was humble. Not what I expected. First, I think it wasn't the first one I met. He was the third one I met. I met Gunny. What's the, Gunny, the fucking old guy, man, from...
from the I know who you're talking about. He was from
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket. He was in 7.
Yeah. And I met the drummer from Blink 182 and fucking somebody. This one chick I can't even fucking remember. Oh my god, it was amazing. She was just above the fucking top, man. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, what? She only want to hang around officers. I was like, well. She don't want to see us. Like, why the fuck am I here? I'm out. See ya. Deuces. Mark Wahlberg, man. We ate fucking dinner with him in Afghanistan. Just a straight up, just a select few of us, man. Just a straight up dude. And he just talked about his life. I can't remember much now, but just started talking about his life. I was like, oh man, that's interesting. I got some good chow, man.
Study every morning. Does Bible, reads the Bible with his team every morning, man. Praise to he's a good dude, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you and then you got your film. The films at your short films. What about, so what are the short films, man? Where do you find your short films at?
Yeah, so my The Unexpected is on YouTube now. And just go to YouTube and type in The Unexpected. And then you can put, and I got 2 projects on YouTube that are titled The Unexpected. One is not mine, one is the Navy's, where it's like a small documentary on me. But then the other YouTube, The Unexpected is an actual short film on organ harvesting. So that's up there. I have another short film that I shot a couple weeks ago. It's in post-production now. It's actually a companion film to my upcoming book, Chameleon, that releases July 25th. If you when you watch the film, it's really, really cool. I took a chapter from my book and adapted it into a short film, and so when you watch that, it's going to motivate you to read the book, right? In order for you to find out how they got in the situation they were in the film, you got to read the first part of the book.
Oh, look at that, dude! That is awesome how you did that.
Yeah. In order to find out how they get out of the situation they're in, you got to read the rest of the book. So it's a companion video. It's a companion film that's going to go along with the book. And I'm super excited about that. That's going to release July 18th, a week before the book releases. And then, and then once the writer's strike ends, then we can go into production on my feature film, which is Unexpected Redemption, which is a sequel to the Unexpected short film.
Dude, that's awesome. Why is there a writer strike right now?
Just because the WGA, which governs all Hollywood screenwriters, they negotiate every few years with the AMPTP. The AMPTP essentially represents all the studios and streamers and negotiates on the behalf of the studios and streamers. And there are just certain things that the AMPTP wouldn't budge on. One of them was AI. They want to be able to use AI to generate screenplays. The WGA said, okay, if you want to use AI, then you still got to be a WGA writer has to come in and rewrite this, whatever the AI technology generates. And then the writer gets sole credit for that screenplay. So all AI is a tool. And the studio said no, because they want to be able to use it and replace writers with AI technology. And so So that was one major sticking point, and another one was just residuals and pay. How much we should be getting, especially from streamers, because whereas on network TV, a writer will get like a $40,000 residual check. On streaming, a writer will get a $400 residual check. That's a big difference. So, it's about pay. It's like, hey, you streamers are making a lot of money, and we don't know how many views videos are getting because there's no real ad space to, quantify it. And so we need to get paid what we deserve and not $400. We need to get paid because you guys are making a lot more money than the networks. So we need to get paid like the networks get paid. So yeah.
That seems fair, man. That seems like a fair deal. Hey, listen, networks getting paid $40,000. You get paid $40,000 from that. Should get the same pay from, the streamers, or a scale built or more.
Yeah.
That's nuts, man.
Yeah, so that's what it's about, and trust me, man, it's been tough because I lost a lot of work because of the writer's strike. Because I had to put pencils down, can't work as a writer, and so, but it's all for the greater good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you have more things to fill your plate than writing too. You got
a bunch of other stuff. Yeah.
That Chameleon. And so when does the Chameleon come out again?
Chameleon drops July 25th. People can get it anywhere books are sold. You can pre-order it now. I'm not sure when you guys are going to release this, but you can pre-order it now at Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, wherever books are sold. If you want to pre-order a signed copy, you can pre-order a signed copy at the talkshoplive.com as well. And yeah, it's a great book. It's a story that's been in my head for like over 14 years. Characters are very loosely based off of me. He's from Nigeria, came to the US, got picked up for this top secret CIA program called Black Box. He's a chameleon agent within Black Box. Chameleon agents are people who can become whatever character they need to become at the drop of a dime. It's grounded in reality, so it's not like they can shapeshift. It's just that they're really, really good actors. And then you got ghost agents who are people who get in and out of places like a ghost, and you have aberration agents who are a combination of ghosts and chameleons. They just go under deep cover for like decades. And then you have wind agents who drive vehicles. So it's a very, very grounded, but fictitious at the same time world. And it's not just an espionage thriller, but it's also a political thriller, because there's a message in there that is the undertone throughout the book, and then it comes to the forefront towards the end of the book as it relates to political unity and how people at the top are driving division. People at the top of the political food chain are intentionally creating this division because it helps keep them in power and keeps money coming in to their specific side. So my goal with the book is not just to entertain and throw people in a cool action thriller and espionage thriller that's authentic, but also to be able to in some way put the peel in the donut, so to speak, so that people can start thinking about, okay, like, I'm on the left. Well, maybe I could have a conversation with somebody on the right. Maybe I can look at things, or I'm on the right. Maybe I can have a conversation. Maybe they can be some type of political unity, because reality is, if we do not come, this country is being torn apart because of division, and primarily because of political division. There's families members that don't even talk to each other because one is on one side, one's on the other side, and a house divided will fall. And there are politicians that are pitting us against each other intentionally in order to maintain money and power. But at the end of the day, that's going to ultimately destroy this nation. And so, again, the purpose of this book is not just to entertain, but to also, inspire people to try and come together and find some type of common ground, because regardless, of our different beliefs, whether political, spiritual, whatever the case may be, there's always some type of common ground we can find, So again, that's the Chameleon Black Box thriller. And like I said,
you sold me, man. You sold me. I'm getting the book.
Yeah, pre-order signed copy of the Talk Shop Live link, man. Help your boy up.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. I'm getting the book for sure. Dude, so Remi, you are a badass.
Thank you, brother.
You were born into a different world than most people were.
Yeah.
And that world was tragically taken from you with your father dying.
Yeah.
And then you were thrown into a world that you were not destined to do anything great.
Yeah.
You were going to be stricken by poverty and had a hard, long, dark road ahead of you. But instead of going down that hard, dark road, you changed your light. You changed your path because you saw a need for survival.
Yes, sir.
And not only that, but it also changed your heart, and it also changed your mind about this country, about how great this country is if you put the hard work into it.
Yeah.
If you step foot out of your comfort zone and being comfortable with being uncomfortable and put in the hard work in. You went through one of the hardest trainings, the hardest training in the world to become a Navy SEAL. You failed, but yet you took that failure as a lesson and a lesson learned to put in hard work. And you triumphed to victory, dude.
Sure.
Then you got out and you see a vision, man. And you are a true visionary that's going to do great things and continue to do great things in your life and then for your family, man. Remi, you are a badass, dude.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. Same, man. Appreciate you.
Dude, love you. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Thank you.
I really do appreciate it, man. If you have a heroic story and you'd like to share it, get in contact with us. Our information's in the bio. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, and share. And then I'll see you on the next episode, badasses.